From R.D. Smothers Wealth Management, this is The Retirement.
When you retire, if you want an exciting life, you need a boring investment strategy.
Matters.
If you enter into retirement without a plan for income, you're not retired, you're simply unemployed.
Podcast.
Hey, this is your host, Dale Smothers, and you're listening to the Retirement Matters Podcast. My hope is that you will find the information you need in every single show on how to do one of the three things: either saving more money more efficiently, planning better for your future where you can live in retirement worry-free, or my favorite, how you can live a happy and fulfilled life in this life you have been given. We know that your time is valuable, and we appreciate you spending it listening to this episode of the Retirement Matters Podcast. On this episode of the Retirement Matters Podcast, we take a deep dive into some of the questions that you have had as you listen to the show, or maybe watch some of our TV shows. Miss Whitney Eubank joins us, and she begins to unravel some questions that certainly you've had in your journey through retirement, maybe some questions that you've never had, never even thought of. I think we unpack 4 questions on this podcast, and all 4 of them have an underlying thread of tax planning, which is unique because we have our last essentially 12 to 14 months to make some adjustments to your current tax plan before the Donald Trump tax credit and the tax cuts sunset. This is something that you should be paying attention to in your retirement plan. And if you need any assistance in doing that or building a plan in the first place, give us a call, 270-600-PLAN. As always, we start with a positive focus. Our pause for positivity this week, I'm not going to ruin it for you, but it's all about making sure that you're okay arriving at your destination in whatever way the Lord has laid out for you. Be faithful and continue working towards your mark. Now, we are going to go straight to the show from here, but I've got to tell you, we love that we've been having a lot of feedback from the show. We appreciate you leaving reviews, leaving honest remarks, and of course, rating our show as well as you believe you can. If you could continue to do that for us, we would greatly appreciate it. Continue to share it with friends, family, relatives, those who may need it. And of course, if you need any assistance from us in the future, we're always here to help. So without further ado, we're going to jump to this week's episode titled, You Have Questions, We Have Answers. Enjoy the show. Good morning to you. I hope you are doing well and you are ready to start discussing all things retirement matters. We have a very special show in store for you today with a very special guest doing one of our most favorite episodes of the Retirement Matters that we do, and that is the questions from listeners. So we're excited to get started. But before we go into the questions that you have and start answering those to the best of our ability, we want to jump to a positive focus. This pause for positivity section, as you are well aware, is the first piece of every show that we do. Let me introduce my special guest. If you haven't already guessed it by now with our intro, the questions for answers section is always none other than the Miss Whitney Eubank. How are you, Whitney?
Dale, I'm good this morning. Enjoying this fall weather.
It's beautiful, beautiful time of year. We were talking about that the other day. It doesn't seem like the leaves have changed much at all.
I know. I just looked outside though, and it really seems to start coming into play, and I'm excited.
Yeah, it's starting. I love it. So I'll bring you in on this, Whitney, because this is a positive focus that we do every single show. And today's is going to be a little bit different because I want to pose a question before we get started. And the question is this. I want you to make up a math problem that gets us to an answer of 4. So it's a little bit of algebra here this morning. And Whitney, I'll actually bring you in on this.
Yeah.
We're going to ask you this question. Okay. What math problem can you think of that gets us to the answer being 4?
I'm going to do 3 plus 1.
3 plus 1. All right. So this goes against the statistics. Statistically speaking, most people would say 2 plus 2.
Okay.
You've used a 3 plus 1, which is certainly the same answer, right? It's a 4.
Right.
We know that it's getting to 4. So now that we have established that, we're getting to 4, and there are many ways to get to 4, I want to shelf that for just a second. I want to go to a book in the Bible. It's Proverbs, written by one of the most intelligent men to ever walk the face of this earth, Solomon. And he writes that if you trust in the Lord with all of your heart and lean not to your own understanding, and that if in all of your ways you acknowledge him, he shall direct your paths. And I think it's interesting to think about this word paths with an S. It's a plural, paths. Many people think path as if there's only one journey or one destination to take to get to the destination that God entails for you. But the reality is there could be very many ways to get to your designed destination.
I love that analogy, Dale. I've never even thought about it like that.
This is, and this is something that kind of hits me. I'm listening to a message, and all of this starts to kind of flood in. There's a lot of things being mentioned in this message, not particularly in the same train of thought, but it was an hour-long message that I listened to by a pastor, and it was pretty incredible. When I put all of it together, this is what I've come up with. So I'm trying to bring it all down to a 2 or 3 minute pause for positivity.
Well,
so
it's easy to see like that.
It's easy to see because if we think, okay, you thought 3 + 1. A lot of people think 2 + 2. Some may have thought of 1 + 1 + 1 + 1. Not many people probably thought of that as their journey to get to 4. Yeah. But all 3 of those journeys got to the answer 4. Mm-hmm. But what if we take a 5 - 1 into effect? Or what if we do a 3 - 2 + 1?
Or a 2 times
plus
2.
1 + 1, or even a 2 times 2. This is exponential growth now. You think about the 4 being the destination and the paths or the journey to get to those 4s. We have to think through this in this capacity. If we trust that the Lord is directing our paths, and we know that the destination that we will arrive at is all in his design, then we have to realize if the 4 is your destiny, it doesn't matter how you get there as long as you keep going. If you are at 3 and you suffer a loss of 2 and you quit, you'll never arrive.
Wow.
But if you trust the process, even in your losses, God has already mapped out the path to arrive at 4.
Because we do have setbacks.
We have setbacks. Mm-hmm. And those minuses are our setbacks in that equation.
I never thought about it like this.
This is where we pause. This is where we pause and we think about our journey. Now, many of us may not be at 4. Many of us may be destined for 8 or 10 or 100 or 2. The reality is, I don't think that we should think of that as 100 being greater than 4 because it's your destiny. It's your destiny. It's not a quantifiable measurement of success. It's that you are successful because of the Lord's hand. And this is also backed up by a parable, the parable of the king who gave talents to his servants. Christ uses this parable and says, over whatever you've been given, be faithful and good stewards. The one who was 2 made 4. The one who was 5 made 10. But the one who was given 1, all he was asked to do is make it 2. And he failed to do it. He dug, we've used this as a pause for positivity as well. He dug it in the earth and hid it because he was afraid of losing it. Do not be afraid of setbacks. Continue on with the journey.
Wow.
That is a positive focus for the day.
Incredible.
So there is our pause for positivity. And I hope that you have gotten as much out of it as I have delivering it to you. We are all on this journey together. Here's my challenge to you this week. Let's go through this life and know that our paths are directed by the Lord. If we will trust in him and lean not to our own understanding, and if we will acknowledge him in all things, he will direct our paths. We believe this to be true, and for that reason, we are on a destiny journey together. Let's challenge one another to always remember that, and I'm sure you can encourage your friends, family members, or even maybe someone who you aren't familiar with right now this week if you just go looking for it. So with that, Pause for Positivity is behind us. We're going to move to the questions for answers section. And rather than be interrupted by our first 10-minute break, Whitney, we're going to take a break right now, 7 or 8 minutes into the show, and we are going to reset and come back with our first question from listeners right after this.
It's 4th and 1 with 2 seconds left in the game. Less than 1 yard separates you from victory. You have the best running back in the league, but your coach calls a Hail Mary.
As silly as that sounds, we see a lot of retirement managers being far too aggressive with your investments when a more conservative play would be a better fit. You have questions, we have answers.
Contact R.D. Smothers Wealth Management, 270-600-PLAN. That's 270-600-7526.
All right, welcome back to the show. We are here in studio with Miss Whitney Eubank. Questions from listeners, one of my favorite shows that we do. Whitney, I am looking forward to these questions, and together we will answer them and bring some insight to people, even the people who have maybe written in questions or called in their questions. They have very specific questions to them, perhaps, but we have selected these questions because we know that it pertains to a lot of people. If you have questions, do not bear them alone. Call into our office. Get someone to give you some advice. There may be follow-up questions that we ask to get more clarity on your situation, because no answer should be taken inside of a small scope, right? We have to understand the entirety of the situation. But some of these questions that we have coming, no doubt, are going to resonate with you. And if you're setting in your situation right now and this question at all relates to you and you would like more clarity, give our team a call, 270-600-PLAN. With that, Miss Whitney, I'm turning it over to you.
Yes, sir.
For our first question.
Excited. We haven't had this show in a while, so.
Yeah, I know. I think we're trying to do these quarterly.
Yeah.
And we're just a couple of weeks behind. So.
I know. So I'm excited this morning.
Our
first question comes from Robert. He's 64. He says, I'm retiring next year. Should I be concerned with higher taxes after the upcoming election? I currently have a 401k. Will this election affect my tax situation at all?
Robert, 64, 401k, and concerned about the election and taxes. All right, so we have said this before, even on the show and in many settings together with either clients or those who are looking to hire our firm. Over the last couple of months, there have been these questions. Should I be doing something different about my investments because of the election? And the answer to that is, historically, no. That's a bad idea to make massive changes to the portfolio simply because of an election. There is a lot of rhetoric about politics and a person's stance or views on certain situations. But when it comes to enacting that and making policy, thankfully, the founders designed a very inefficient form of government. Gridlock is by design. Things don't just pass because we elect a new president. So more and more we are seeing, that people are looking to maybe make massive changes to either the Constitution or government. And at the end of the day, thankfully, those things don't go into effect right away. With that being said, your 401k is very much subject to the market. And at 64, my first recommendation would be you need to sit down with someone. If you're 64 years old and have money in a 401k still, if you're anywhere close to retirement like Robert is, you need to be discussing ways to safeguard that money. Now, we didn't know how much was in there, correct? I don't think that was in.
No, he didn't say.
So at 64, you need to be considering something called a in-service rollover. This in-service rollover may be possible for you to where we can move this to an IRA and possibly get a little bit more specific on how we are investing that money. 401ks are very good growth vehicles, but after you cross the age of 59 and a half, most people need to be focusing on the income phase of the retirement journey. And if you've listened to this show very long at all, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So, Robert, if this is you, sir, to directly address your question, which was about taxes, the election very easily could change the tax code. Everything I just said about policy and politics, it's true, but there was a president some time ago, Donald J. Trump, who enacted a tax cut. And that tax cut went into effect and has been into effect ever since and is set to disappear or change, or the word that we like to use is sunset, in 2026. January the 1st, 2026, taxes change. They go back to what they were before the Donald Trump tax cut. What does that mean for you? Well, this age-old wisdom of retiring with a 401k because you're going to retire at a lower tax bracket may be in jeopardy, not only because of this tax cut, but certainly as a result of things like this tax cut going away. Taxes will increase. Many brackets will increase by as much as 10%. And the bottom line is the middle income earners of America will see a tax increase unless the same president that put it into motion gets back in. And that's not a pitch for us to all go out and vote for Donald Trump. I will certainly not be dying on either of those heels, not on this show. But I'll tell you, if one side gets it, that will sunset. If another side gets it, it will likely be prolonged. With that being said, you, Robert, need to be sitting down with someone very quickly to address the idea of rolling that 401k at the age of 64 into an IRA, safeguarding what you already earned, and continuing to contribute to the 401k, maybe even being a little bit more aggressive with that money, and I can explain why at a different time. But there are some benefits to being aggressive with the new money you put to the 401k while you're safeguarding the old 401k. And you know what's funny, Whitney, is we see a lot of people who already understand this. They know they made this money and they're concerned with risking it in the market. So instead of even thinking about the option of an in-service rollover, they move all of this money to a fixed account and they just set it in cash and it does nothing.
Yeah.
And the market now up over 20% in the year 2024, and they've got zero from it.
Wow.
And a lot of people even made this move in the lows of the 2022 rate hikes, which has, again, compounded their problem. If that is you, if you're concerned about market risk, you have money in your 401k and you're over the age of 59 and a half, give our team a call, 270-600-PLAN.
Yep. So regardless of who we have in office in the next few weeks, you can still safeguard this 401k and protect it.
Absolutely. And those rules are not in danger of being changed. A lot of those rules are governed by your individual plan. So that's something our team can sit down with you and let you know if you have an option to do.
All right.
Yes, ma'am. I'll tell you what, you want to jump to a real quick break? We'll come back with another question right after this short break. Don't go anywhere. We're coming back with more Retirement Matters after this.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Looks like we have about a 72% chance of a successful landing today.
Did you catch that? A 72% chance of success?
No one would fly on this airline.
But you'd be surprised how many people take this approach to their own retirement.
This is Dale Smothers, your host of the Retirement Matters Show. Join me right here each week as we discuss ways you can gain confidence in your retirement plan. Good decision-making, time-tested strategies, and a well-written plan will allow you the luxury of relaxation, even when you're going through those panic-inducing turbulent times. As the host of the Retirement Matters Show, we will teach you how to keep your retirement on track, making sure that your destination is everything you wanted it to be.
Tune in for the Retirement Matters Show with Dale Smothers. Also, check out the Retirement Matters podcast. Just search for Retirement Matters with Dale Smothers on the podcast platform of your choice.
All right, welcome back to the show. For those of you who are just joining us, I'm here in studio with Miss Whitney Eubank from our team. We are doing our quarterly questions from listeners, and we are excited to get to the next one.
Yeah.
Where are we at, Miss Whitney?
Our next question comes from Steve. He's 65.
Okay.
He says, Dale, I heard you mention the other morning on the Big Dog about neither presidential candidate addressing our national debt and how it continues to rise. How do you feel a tax plan will help a retiree like me with just a 401k and Social Security? I don't currently have a tax plan.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And we could talk for a very long time about the national debt and how it continues to rise. Over $1.8 trillion this year alone, and we're not even through the month of October. This is somewhat concerning. And when we think about this, I actually found a statistic the other day. Let me pull this out. I had it I had it saved.
Regarding the last 4 years?
It's wild, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's not even just the last 4. It's actually, I guess it is the last 4. You're exactly right. This statistic shows, and it's not a political statistic at all. It's just showing how much we're spending as a country. It shows the national debt. It took 221 years for our national debt to reach $12 trillion, and we have increased the national debt by $12 trillion since 2020.
Wow.
Now, this entails 2 presidential administrations, both Trump's at the very end and, of course, the Biden administration now. I'm not here to talk politics. I'm just telling you, no one seems to be paying attention to how we are spending money, and it is quickly becoming a national crisis, to say the least. We're at $35 trillion worth of debt right now, and we have to put that into perspective, Whitney. I've made this comment before about how it's hard to quantify what $1 trillion is. $1 trillion. What does that actually mean? If we take it to seconds, which is something we can all kind of relate to, 1 million with an M seconds is 11 days. 1 billion with a B seconds is 31 years. Take a wild guess. And you might have heard this, but what is 1 trillion seconds? Do you remember that?
I remember you saying it, but no, I don't
31,688 years.
You said this just the other day, and it's unbelievable to think about.
1 trillion. It's wild. At 1 trillion seconds. Now, I didn't remember that either. I'm actually looking at a statistic, so don't worry about that. But I'll tell you, 1 trillion seconds, 31,000 years. That's a number.
So it's easy to see that we've got to be able to attack something.
Exactly. $35 trillion worth of debt. And the reason that relates to the tax plan, thanks for keeping me grounded there, Whitney, is because we are going to have to repay that at some point in time. And one of the most, easiest ways, or the most obvious ways to raise income and to raise revenue as a country is to tax the people. And we believe wholeheartedly that taxes will rise. We talked about this in the first question with the sunsetting of the Trump tax cuts. That is possible. But whether or not we pay back national debt is really not a negotiable answer. We have to pay it back. It is something that we are obligated to pay. And what's funny is this usdebtclock.org. You can go to that, usdebtclock.org, and see our national debt. That particular $35 trillion number doesn't even account for some things like Medicare or Social Security obligations. This is just national debt that we owe other people, whether it be U.S. citizens or foreign governments. So this debt crisis that we have is out of control. And for that reason, Steve, we strongly recommend that you get a plan for how you can pay off the IRS at a known rate as opposed to waiting until a later time and paying at an unknown rate. I want to ask you a question, Steve. All you have is Social Security, and all you have is your 401k, which, job well done. And, don't worry about that. You're completely normal. A 401k and Social Security is how a lot of people retire in today's age. But that 401k, if you look at the dollar amount that you have in there, let's say it's $500,000 or it's $1 million or maybe it's more, how much of that is yours? And a lot of times people think, well, every bit of it is mine. I've put it in and the employer's put some in and I'm 100% vested. But the reality of this whole situation is that some of that belongs to the IRS. And the sooner we can get out of that partnership, the better. A well-written tax plan can help you get out of that partnership as cheap as possible. We'll put it that way, Whitney. We'd be happy to help you with that. 270-600-PLAN. We can put a tax plan together, which is one of the 5 main plans that you must have in retirement to make it as successful as possible.
Dale, do you care to go ahead and touch on a couple of different strategies maybe?
Sure.
That would entail in that tax plan? So
the tax planning is going to incorporate Roth conversion potentials there. Maybe taking some of those monies out of that 401k. How old was Steve?
He is 65.
65 years old, and in-service rollover may make sense for Steve. And from that, we take it to an IRA. In that IRA, we can consider Roth conversions. The only problem with Roth conversions is a lot of times people do too much, where they end up getting taxed higher, and they may even kick themselves into IRMA at 65, it's something you need to be aware of. So Roth conversion strategies is one of those things. Another one is making sure that we are taking money from the right sources. In your instance, Steve, with a 401k being the only source we can take money from, the Roth conversion strategy may be something that helps you, again, pay less in tax over your lifetime. So
good deal.
A tax plan is important, and one of the main reasons is because the national debt is getting out of control, and we see taxes increasing over the next 10 to 15, perhaps even, golly, you think 30 years down the road.
Unfortunately,
taxes
but we see it happening.
Unbelievable, yeah.
All right, Dale, the next question is from Susan. She is 63 years old, and she says, I still have a couple years away from retirement, but the inflation in the economy is starting to scare me a bit. Is there anything I should be doing now with my retirement to protect it from inflation?
Doing now to protect against inflation, the number one thing that we can be doing is planning for inflation. It's kind of ironic.
Very true,
yeah,
very
I mean, you think about this, the way that we can protect against the loss of purchasing power is making sure that we understand how much purchasing power we're going to need. So we like to put a plan together for income that inflates at 2.5% and then be able to answer the question definitively, do we have enough money to retire, yes or no? If you feel like today you need $6,000 a month, well, in 20 years, that may be $12,000 a month, and you need to be prepared for that. So making sure that you have a plan to address inflation is the first step. The second step is making sure that you're putting those monies to work in assets that will keep up with or hopefully outpace inflation. And this means not being so concerned with stock market volatility that you put money in a coffee can or you keep it in cash. Putting that money to work is necessary, and you can do it safely to the degree that is required to keep up with inflation and deliver the income desired in retirement. You can do that without taking a great deal of risk, and we can show you how to do that. Again, giving our team a call, sitting down with a team member at RDS Wealth is one of the first steps to make that happen. 270-600-PLAN.
All right, Dale, the last question that we have comes from James. He says, I've heard about RMDs and have also heard you talk about Roth conversions. What is the benefit of taking a Roth conversion now if I'm going to have to pay taxes on that money again when I take my RMDs?
James, very good question. This is all about taxes here today.
Right now he's 67.
67. So that certainly plays into this. James, 67, considering Roth conversions, taking these Roth conversions. Now, you said he's up against RMDs. Is that what this question says?
He says, I've heard about RMDs and have also heard you talk about Roth conversions.
I got it. Now I'm understanding.
He says, what is the benefit of taking...
So at 67 years old, I was thinking, wait a minute, we're not quite to RMD age yet, just for those of you who aren't familiar.
Maybe he's just prepping, yeah.
At 73, we have to begin taking income from these IRAs, and that's exactly what James is discussing. So kudos to you, first of all, for knowing that that is there. And then considering Roth conversions now with the fear that, golly, if I do it now, I'm going to have to take more RMDs in the future from the Roth account, it sounds like is what he's asking. And so let me just take that off the table altogether, because, James, when we move money from a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA, we pay tax on it right then, and we never have to pay tax on that dollar again. And we are not forced to take a required minimum distribution from Roth IRAs. RMDs only apply to pre-tax dollars. So IRAs that are traditional require a minimum distribution at the age of 73. IRAs that are Roth do not. The only way to get money to a Roth is to pay tax on it at some point in time. I want you to think of the tax code as a funnel or a filter, if you will, that all money must flow through at least once, and if done correctly, only once. This is the desire of a well-written tax plan, to make sure that we are taking that money out efficiently, passing it through the filter of the tax code. IRS takes their portion, you get yours, and with yours, you put it in a Roth bucket, and that grows tax-free. It grows tax-deferred while you let it sit there, which means you get growth on the interest as well as growth on the taxes you would have paid on that interest. And then when you take it out, you get tax-free income. That is a Roth IRA. It's a benefit because it allows you to do the conversions this year, pay taxes on a known rate like we were discussing, as low as potentially 22% or 12%. That's a sweet spot for Roth conversions. And from there, never pay another dime in taxes. And for those of you who are in your RMD age, we don't have time on here, Whitney. You see the clock there. We got right at a minute. For those of you who are in RMD age right now, we need to be aware that you may, if you don't need those RMDs, you may be in a perfect opportunity to do Roth conversions at your age right now and have very low tax on that money because we're going to use the RMD to help pay the tax. You don't need it anyway. Let's go ahead and get rid of the tax bill. If that's you, give us a call, 270-600-PLAN. For the sake of time, it is wild how quickly this show goes, especially our questions from listeners. Whitney, it's always a pleasure. I hope that someone has heard something in these questions today. And before we go, I'm going to give you about 15 seconds. If you've got anything for the listener, now's the time.
Absolutely. Listen, guys, if you missed this show, catch us on our YouTube channel.
Very good.
We have our YouTube channel up and running. We're excited about that. We have a few extra marketing things that's going to be happening in 2025. So stay tuned. Enjoy today's fall weather. It's beautiful.
It is beautiful. Now, I'll tell you, this is from a marketing director, Miss Whitney Eubank. So, of course, she throws out the marketing hook.
Yes, sir.
She makes things happen here. We appreciate what you do for us, Miss Whitney. If you need any assistance from us, you know you can call us. We appreciate you taking your time to hear what we have to say, and we love talking to you. We look forward to talking to you next week, if it's right here on the same show or it is in person in one of our offices. Either way, always remember, save money, plan well, and live happy in retirement. God bless.
Investment advisory services made available through AE Wealth Management, LLC. AE Wealth Management and Artie Smothers Wealth Management are not affiliated companies. Investing involves a risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual situation. Artie Smothers Wealth Management is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Artie Smothers Wealth Management.